Welcome. I'm so happy that you took some time out of your busy schedule to come and spend, come and learn, come and hear a different perspective. I always say a different perspective to add to what you already know. I know that in the audience, we have some SLPAs, CDAs, SLPs. We have some students. We have some new clinicians. We have some curious clinicians. We have some people from the States. We have some people from Canada. So I am glad that you decided to join me on this Thursday. So we'll get right to the topic. This is the second free summer webinar this summer. Last month, I talked about our role in different settings. And today I want to talk about documentation. I have to tell you that it was therapeutic for me to do this talk because this is something I struggle with all the time. So writing and getting ready to present and to share what I know so far with you was therapeutic. I've made the best notes in the last 2 weeks because I was in it. I was reflecting on what I do. I was reflecting on what other people do that are successful when they write their notes. So really, you got the best of me right now, and I'm so happy to share. So now I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, share. Whoops, let's get to the presentation. I am going to put it up. And if somebody could say in the chat if they can see it, that would be great. I just want to know if people can see it before I start talking. Okay, great. Thank you. Put this down. Okay, so documentation, the what, the why, the when to report. Sign right here so we can see everybody. And so I'm coming to you from Differently with Soul, my private company for speech pathology. And I just wanted to share what I've learned about documentation so far and give you a different perspective to consider. I always put a butterfly on my slides to remember that the little time that we spent together today could have a humongous impact on your life later on. You know, the butterfly effect, a butterfly in one area bats their wings, and then it creates a storm in another one. Well, I don't want to create a storm, but I want to create a big impact in your clinical practice. So that's why I always put one so I remember that every little thing that we do together can have an impact. Okay, let's see if I can move down. Okay. So documentation, it has so many different names. We call it so many different things depending on where we work, where we live, what settings we are, and where we're at in our career. And so whatever it is that we call it, it's when we're writing things down. It's when we're writing things down. So I just wanted to come here and see all the different things that we call, that we define as documentation. First, I want to tell you a little bit about me for those who don't know me, because I have some people in the audience that I don't know. So it's so happy to see new people. What's our objective for today? The what, the why, the when, and I added the how. So it's a bit of a tip sheet of all the little things that I'm doing right now to make things a bit more effective and efficient when it comes to documentation. And what's in it for you? Every time I do something like this, I want to see how it's going to change or how it's going to impact your practice. And then I'll tell you more about what's going on in Differently with Soul. If we have some time for questions, that would be great. So please call me Soul. My name is Soledad, but most people call me Soul. I've been an SLP for a very, very long time. I've had humble beginnings. It was hard to get into the profession. It was hard to start working. It took me probably 10 years before I'm starting to feel my groove. And it's through personal experience and things. So I learned through a lot of challenges, but I don't want you to. That's why I created Differently with Soul, to make sure that people can avoid all these problems and start working right from the beginning. And I have a lot of different roles. I work in rehab, I work in private, I work in long-term care, I work in acute care, I work with motor vehicle accidents, I work with kids. I just started working with kids in the last year, and it's fascinating. And so I write reports, but I write so many different reports. So that's where I noticed that there were some changes, some patterns, and some things I wanted to share. So why are we here? Is because documentation is really, I want you to understand how to write it depending on the setting and what to write and when to write it to really showcase your work in different settings, right? You don't have to write a very long report if you're in acute care. You may have to write a super long report when you work with motor vehicle accidents. So it's just to navigate and know where you need to put the attention. And why it matters, because this is where you show your worth. This is where people get to know who you are when they read your notes. This is how you know the critical thinking and how much information they got and what was important for them to make an impression. So it's really, it shows your clinical value. And so it's kind of your print, your paw print or your imprint. I don't have the words right now to describe who you are as a clinician is through your notes. But one of the things that I really want to make sure of is that it's one of the most important skills, clinical skills that you have to develop. You will develop it your whole career. It's going to continue to improve and get better as long as you are in the field. I'm so happy when I see that my notes are evolving and I find new ways to say things. It keeps evolving after 25 years. And so you just have to realize that. I just want you to understand that it's not beside your job. It's part of your job. It's half your job. It is half your job. We got to get it in. Imagine if you work in a hospital and the doctors just write notes at the end of the day. So here you are in a hospital all day and you have no notes on your patients. The nurses write their notes at the end of their shifts. The OTs and PTs write their notes the next day in 2 days. We all need notes, reports to make a clinical impression. We draw it from the assessment, but we draw it from clinical impressions from other reports. So your notes is as important as the activity that you do with the patient. It is half your job. Don't say I'm just going to do therapy and I'll do my notes when I have time. It is half your job. And I'm saying this because this is the part that I struggle with the most. I still struggle with it whenever I go to different settings, is making sure that I have the dedicated time to write that note. Even if you have to cut the session short to make sure that you write that note, it's super important. Sometimes in rehab, I do half-hour sessions and it takes me half hour to write that note, especially if you work with aphasia. So many nuances. So it's really important that your work is showcased in your note. I never want to make my notes smaller. And then we miss details of what was important in the session. We'll go through other things that are important, how to organize your notes a little bit later, but I really want to you to understand, and I wish our managers and directors and the people who pay us understand that it's not just eyeball to eyeball that's important. Our notes are as important, right? Or as important to help the patient. Just think about motor vehicle accidents when you write your reports and the lawyer defends it in court. This is how you help the patient, not just with the therapy, but this is how you help the patient or the client be compensated for what happened to them. It's through your report. So I cannot stress this. I cannot stress this more than that. Like it's as important. But we don't spend a lot of time in school about that. This is the skill that you develop on the job. In school, they give you all the theory, they want to give you what to do, the clinical approaches to do your job. But the notes, you learn this on the job, in the placement. So it's really a place that you really have to put a lot of focus on. I cannot stress it enough. This is how we're going to judge your expertise. This is where people are going to look at you and say, oh, okay, from her notes, I understand what she taught. So it's like it's a personal signature I read my colleagues' report and I see their style, and I know that one of my colleagues is really focused on safety. My other colleague is focused on social communication. Like, we see the values and the clinical values in your notes. So that's why we want to spend time with it. Okay. It's going to continue to evolve throughout your career, as I just said before, but it's really important that you understand that it's part of your job. It's not on the side. It is part of your job. Okay. It's going to look different across settings. I think we talked about that a little bit. It's going to, the why, the what, the when, the how, it's going to change depending on the clinical setting, the population that you serve, and also who pays your salary. Is it public? Is it private? Is it education? Is it health? Is it the client? It's gonna be tinted a little bit by who is driving the whole industry behind where you are at the moment. Okay, so let's focus on the what. So the type of documentation, the format. There's a few different formats that we have to navigate. If you call them something different, it's another name for these that I'm going to talk about. It's always assessments and screenings. And here I'm just going to take a second to say that I'm talking about SLPs, SLPAs, and CDAs. Everybody writes all those things at the same time. The content may be different when it's an SLP who's doing assessments and a CDA or a SLPA that's doing a screening, but we all do some type of assessment and evaluation. So I think we can recognize that in our notes and in the type of notes that we write. And so it's always some type of an evaluation. It's always going to be some type of progress or session notes. It's always going to be, I want you to know that sometimes you're going to report on a change of status that's going to impact your client or patient's care. And then there's always going to be a discharge summary at the end or something to kind of wrap up what you've done in this setting with your client. It's along those lines. And if you look at all the notes you've written, it's these four categories. They fall under those, right? The assessment, you can be as detailed as you want. We need data and information to know what you're going to talk about and why you think what the goals, why you think to justify the goals, basically. So be as detailed as you want in assessment. I don't think you should be succinct. I think an assessment is going to be your longest reports regardless. Progress and session notes, it's quick check-ins. It's quick check-ins. In our field, we have different formats that we use to help us. We have the SOAP format, we have the DARP format. DARP is Data Analysis Response Plan. So pretty much a bit like the SOAP. Sometimes we use narratives, but I encourage you to use what has already been done because it's going to help you organize your note a little bit better. And it's mostly about looking at the performance. What are they doing? What is the performance and the progress is compared to the goals? So are they doing better? Do they need help? Are the goals still appropriate? So it's a quick check-in to go in. Sometimes people will talk about clinical notes. Like in some settings, they will have the most information in the chart, and they'll have some notes on the side. I'm trying as much as possible now, regardless of where I work, to put everything in the legal document and in one place. Sometimes having a lot of little notes on the side and then having the note in the chart, you lose information. I really try to do that. Another thing that I do sometimes is if I'm in the private world and my clients want a little resume of what we did, my resume is my note in my client's chart, legal document. Like that, I'm not gonna write everywhere. I'm not gonna have different notes everywhere. I want one place to go. So it adds to the skill of the note because now you cannot just use clinical jargon. You have to use terms that, for lack of a better word, a lay person will understand and and so there's no secret basically between you and your client when you write a note. They should be in a know. They should know what's going on. So they can understand it, the team can understand it. Try to make sure you only have one place. This is going to help your efficiency as well, your time management as well. Same for changing status. If you're going to send a note if your client sends you a note about, they're not going home, they're going somewhere else, and you answer. That note is your note for the chart. That reply email is your note to the chart. So you're going to write it in a way that's going to be very comprehensive for everybody involved. That is my little tip for you if you're writing notes. Like I'm not writing all different types of notes, right? And discharge summaries, same thing. We've worked on this. Those are still things that you're working on. This help. Those are my recommendations going forward. If I write this for the client, same note goes in the chart. If I put it in an email, same note goes in the chart. These can often be succinct a lot, but it depends of who's going to read it as well. If your discharge note is going to go to another speech pathologist or another SLP or CDA, you're going to put some notes in there so they can recognize what to follow up on, right? I put here some notes for schools. I have to disclose that I do not work in schools. I work with kids in a private clinic, but I don't work with kids in a school. So I know that they have IEPs where you put individual plans for kids. And so I know that these are special and structured to keep track of where we are in their program or their progress during the school year. The most important parts of your notes are always your clinical impression and your recommendations. I also want to stress that it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're a SLPA, CDA, or an SLP, everybody writes impressions, everybody writes recommendations. It could be different and detailed in different ways if you've done a thorough evaluation or screening. But after each session, after each encounter, there should be a little, what does that mean? And that mean is a clinical impression. So, okay, we've worked on this articulation goal for a while. What does that mean for him? Can I understand him better or not? This is the clinical, everybody writes clinical impression. Actually, I should do a whole webinar in clinical impression because it is so multi-layered and everybody does it. And it's another skill that we have to work on all the time, right? Based on our knowledge, our experience, and our knowledge and experience, we create clinical expertise and clinical impressions. I'll just say that, but one day I should probably do a webinar just on that. Why the purpose? This is what I hope that every time you do a note, every time you write a note, you make sure that these points have been targeted. I really want to make sure that these are targeted because then your note is complete and it serves the purpose of why you wrote it. So first you want to track progress. That's the number one thing. You want to track the intervention that you've been working on with the patient. You want to highlight some helpful strategies in and outside of therapy that can help the reader understand how else you are helping the patient or the client and how else they can contribute to the patient's intervention or life. You want to share with the team some of your clinical thinking, and really that means your impression of what's going on. And also, I always write my note thinking that what if I'm sick tomorrow? What if I'm on vacation tomorrow? What if there's an unforeseen day off that I have to take? Who will they be able to pick up my work? Will they be able to pick up where I left off and continue? So always keep in mind to keep notes detailed to enough details and enough information for the next SLPA, CDA, or an SLP to carry on your intervention. So sometimes it would be like, oh, I will follow up when the patient or the client is no longer on oxygen. I will follow up when the family comes back with some strategies that they practice at home. I will follow up if. So then the person reading your note will know when to come back, will know what to focus on. Things like that I think are important to put in notes to make sure that our colleagues, our team can follow up. Also to justify intervention, sometimes for notes, we need to show, are they still appropriate for speech therapy? Are they benefiting from this intervention? It's always good and are they motivated? It's always good to show why you're here. in some little sentence. Sometimes it's in the plan, sometimes it's in the assessment, the assessment section. But it's always good to say if they're still appropriate, if it's still something they need to continue, and to protect yourself legally. I want to tell you a little bit about that because we often forget when we work in the public system that every note that we write is a legal document. And in the motor vehicle system, we are very, very aware of it because it's lawyers asking for our reports. And every word we say can be dissected in a courtroom. So we're very aware that everything we say is important and true to the patient. But another thing that I want you to understand is that in the public system, you can still be pursued in court, but it's never going to happen today. It's going to happen in 5 years. So your notes have to be complete that when they call you in court to defend your impression, that you remember the context. Or if you don't remember, that it's so complete that you can just go by your notes and explain from your field of expertise what you meant by this. I remember very early on, maybe 15 or 20 years ago, I listened to a lawyer talk about clinical documentation and the ethical and legal implication of it. He gave us a case. I'll say it quickly, see if I have some time. Yes. He gave us a case. The case was about a doctor who wrote in his notes, patient stable, but 2 hours later, the patient died. One thing led to another. They went to court, but they went to court in 5 years. In 5 years, it took that much time for the doctor to stand in court and defend his word stable. And so what the lawyer wanted us to understand is that you have to justify your clinical impression, examples, what you look at, to make sure that if we call you in 5 years, you know what you mean. And so details are important. Examples are important. If you refer to a place in the chart where you look at stability or you look at CT scan, you can say as per chart review of these documents, as per vital signs, because vital sign is a term that most people know in acute care or rehab. So you have to justify a little bit your impression so we can, if we're ever called in court, God forbid, but if you're ever called in court, you have the information in front of you to be, there's no question mark. And I remember really feeling, oh my God, I have to be careful when I read my notes. The other thing I will tell you is I joke to say that paralegal are your enemies. Paralegal are your enemies because in your career, if for any reason one client is called to court and you have to justify, the lawyer, the defense team, the other team are always going to try to discredit your credibility. Discredit your credibility. Because they want to show that what you said is wrong. The way they discredit you is by looking for pattern of errors, patterns of inconsistency. But in doing that, they will go through your notes. They will ask to see other reports, other clients. And that's why paralegals are employed. They're employed in lawyer's office to really dig through certain leads to prove a point or to dispute a point. And so you never want to be cut in that. You never want to be cut there. I'll give you another example. This is very important. I want to spend some time here so you understand the value and the worth and the importance of your notes. I once wrote a report for a client in the community for a motor vehicle accident. My reports, because in that industry, reports are very detailed, very long, lots of examples, justify continuously. I wrote a 25-page report. I recommended a therapy plan. 3 months later, I get mail at home, and I from a speech pathologist, and it was a 53-page report. But so what she did is she analyzed my report to make sure that what I was saying made sense. So in the world of lawyers and insurance and to avoid fraud, people go to great length to make sure that you are credible. You could not understand how I felt when I'm reading this report about my report. And Miss Silencio reported this, Miss Silencio reported that. I was hyperventilating just reading the 53-page report. It took me like almost 45 minutes to read it. But at the end, she agreed with my recommendations. But understand that if she did not, it could have really played on my credibility, my reputation, and my license as a clinician. So all these little moments that I'm telling you right now, I'm not trying to freak you out. I'm just trying to say that your notes are very important for yourself and for the client or the patient, and to take them seriously. I'll just end on that. So that's why whenever you write notes, I would really want you to make sure that all those things are there, that you track progress, that you share your impression, that you highlight what's helpful at the moment for the patient, that you make sure that the person that's going to continue your work has enough information, that you're very legal and honest, and that you justify your interventions for the place you work for. That's what I'll say for now. When, if you go to when now, we did what, why, when to write notes. All I'm going to say is as soon as possible. As soon as possible in all the settings. That would be the best scenario, that everybody in every settings write their note right after the session, right after the phone consultation, right after the email that you sent, right after the team meeting about a client or a team consultation about a patient. Write the note as soon as possible. Why? Because it's going to be the most accurate, and it's going to really help you with your accountability of all the things that you're discussing. I mean, we have some leeways depending on the setting, depending on the licensing body, but if I would be, for me, that would be the gold standard. And I see that this is the part where I struggle the most, is sit down and write it. Write it right away. This is a big problem because I know what I want to write, but it's the time to write it to make sure that I have all the pieces together. And so often it can also depend on your setting. So in acute care setting, point of care charting, you shift based, you do it right away. Why? Because patients come here because they're unstable. If you write a note now, if you saw a patient in the morning and you write your note in the afternoon, the patient may have changed. Could be, transferred to ICU, could be palliative, could be, going home. You want your note to reflect what you did at the moment. And in acute care, you got to do it right away. When it comes to rehab or the community, it depends a bit of the setting. You can do, each organization will have some type of rules to follow daily, weekly, monthly to put all your notes together. But if you can, do it every day because that's the best practice. You don't forget anything. Private practice is really after each session. It's really tied to the billing. Depends also what the client wants. If the clients want minimum, you do minimum because they're paying. If they want thorough because they want your assessment to go to other specialists or to be defended somewhere else, it really is a conversation with the client. But depending on your licensing body, there's still a minimum requirements that you have to do. Schools, it all depends on the IEPs as well, but you are required to write every session. And again, in motor vehicle accidents, MVAs, it's very detailed, and it's all to justify the service for the insurance and to help the patient get compensated for their disability or impairments. But it's very detailed. They want details, and you want to explain details as much as possible. Like I said, it also depends on your licensing body. I live in Ontario, in Canada, and we are regulated by CASLPO, our college, and so they have regulations about record keeping. I checked out a few others. ASHA is the American regulation for speech pathologists, and I believe SLP has as well, and CDA, but they're great. The website is full of tips and preferred guidelines and strategies to be able to document in different settings and for different populations. And so I recommend that you go to ASHA and really just type in documentation and record keeping. And this is so many different articles and acts and guidelines came up. So I really encourage you to do that. And also another place to look at is not just our licensing body, but the place of work where you work. So, for example, the Ontario Hospital Association, I work in Ontario, I work in a hospital, also has some guidelines about how they want their staff to record and have information. It has to do with consent, it needs to be documented. It has to do with privacy and how you put information in the system. So there's every layer has some things to contribute to documentation. So just be aware of all these little nuances where you work and from your licensing body, right? I know there's so much information on this slide. I should have made 2 or 3 slides, but this is where I'm chiming in terms of what I've learned over the last several years. Just want to see the time. We're good. Over the last several years to know how I was able to, little tips that I was able to implement to help me get better because I've been telling you all along that documentation is not my forte and I have to really work on it consciously every day to make sure that I'm accurate and I'm on time. I do work most of the time in an acute care setting, so I have to chart every day and I am challenged by it, right? So as soon as you have templates, as soon as you have clinical setting specific forms, use them because it means that the organization, the setting has thought about a lot of different things that you don't have to think about just by following the format of their template or their forms. So I would encourage you to use that as much as possible in your setting. POC is plan of care. Some places will want you to write a plan of care, but how are you going to provide therapy? How are you going to provide your intervention? Start at the end. I realize that when I start my note at the end, I start with the clinical impressions and recommendations. Um, I don't sweat the small stuff. Sometimes we struggle with do we have to write that the family was present and that they took a phone call and then they fought with the patient? Do we have to write that the nurse interrupted and we had to go out for 5 minutes and come back? No. But sometimes if you go from the beginning and you write your note as it happens, you get stuck in those little comments. But sometimes when you start from the bottom and you write right away the clinical impressions and right away the recommendations and you go back to the data, you start to see what is justifying the clinical impression and the recommendations, and you don't need to talk about all the little fluff. And so that's one way for me to make sure that the right information is in the notes. Unless the fight between the family and the patient and the nurse interrupting has a real impact on your work and the overall care of the patient. Other than that, I wouldn't report on it, right? Be measurable. The more stats, the more context, the more cues, the more examples you add, it really adds to for people to understand what happened and how you're tracking your work. I do embrace AI for this. I do. I feel like there's a lot of support that can help us with speech to text drafts. So I'll give you an example. Privately or even at the hospital, sometimes if I see somebody and I don't have time to go to a computer right away, what I'll do is I'll do a quick note on AI a tool just to say, I saw Mr. AF, it's 3 o'clock on Tuesday. We talked about this. These were the things that we talked about. This is the assessment. Wife will come tomorrow for discussion. I'll change the diet. I'll just, without any identifying information, I put this in a note. It's sent to my email. And then later on, I can use this as the core, without losing the details, as the core of my notes when I can set down. It has helped me so much. Sometimes if I'm working privately and as soon as I get out of the client's house and I'm sitting in my car, I will do the same thing. So I get all the little details. If I didn't write it during the session, all the little details. And then later on, as I write my note from the bottom up, I see what's relevant, but I'm not missing anything. So I just wanted to bring that out because now there's a lot of tools that can help you with that efficiency. I'm looking at efficiency at this moment, not the content, because you still need we still need the human to make the clinical impression, but it's the efficiency of writing down that note and not forgetting the details. Embrace cheating. And what I mean by that is that we're a field where you're gonna read a lot of other people's reports, and you're gonna like how people say things and how they're commenting on this and how they talk about eating despite risk and how they talk about a patient struggling and how you were able to support. Talk about family dynamics. Talk about it's so interesting to read so many notes and then realize I like how she said that. Copy and paste, keep it because you'll be able to use these type of little snippets later on in other assessments. It's not cheating, it's sharing. We're a very collaborative field and team, and it's just to make ourselves more efficient and to be able to develop the jargon to be able to express what we want. So every time I love reading my colleagues' notes. I love because I take little words here and there and little subheadings that they have, and I'm like, oh, this is what I'm doing in my next swallowing assessment. Copy and paste, and I keep it. Um, and so obviously ethically and legally without identifying information from the other client. But sometimes I've created in my emails, in my draft, a lot of different little templates and snippets of information. So wherever I am on the unit or in the community, I can always pull it from my email and complete my note. And so I just wanted to give a little tip for that. So we're not cheating when we're copying other people's notes. It's actually helping, right? Use macros. I just talked about that. Really having little recurring phrases that you use all the time. Make sure that you have them listed somewhere so you can always copy and paste and help get your point across in a more succinct way or more efficient way or a nicer way, basically. Because you're continuously learning the lingo. But I say lingo because there's some clinical terms, but also how to explain things so everybody understands, the client, the team, and the funders, right? So it's nice to when you see that somebody's saying it right to use that as well, and then it evolves. It makes your documentation skills evolve. Um, yes, my biggest struggle is the time. It's not that I don't know what to write, it's to sit down and do it. So I try to have every time I see somebody do a chart. I try, but it doesn't always work if I'm on a unit or there's a meeting in the middle of this or I'm rushing to do something else. And so block time at the end of the day. Sometimes it's block enough time. People will say, oh, I'll do my assessment. For 30 minutes should be okay, but really an assessment can take an hour. And so to be realistic in the time that you need, and if you need to cancel the last session of the day to finish all your notes, I'm a big I'm a big believer in that. Because when your notes are trailing back because you're still seeing more patients, you're at a disservice for the patients that you're not writing the note for. The team does not have your note to make their own clinical impression about the patient. So I would say I don't take new clients until my notes are right. And this is a struggle. I have to be honest, that organization skills, that time management skills to make this happen is huge for me. It's something I work on all the time. And that batch and time block is really tied to your own skills as a person, your time management, your organization, your prioritization. So these are a challenge when you have a lot of notes to write. And so to be aware of those skills when you write notes is super important because you may know what to say, but to write it down and do it is another thing, right? Review your work, ask a colleague to review from time to time. Just, sometimes we get set in our ways, we get information from other people, but nobody reviews, we don't get feedback on our notes. So it'd be good to hear what others are saying, to really be vulnerable and know that they're just commenting on your notes to help you get better. So go to a trusted colleague to do that. I just think it's great maybe once a month or regularly to do that to make sure that you're reviewing your notes and that your notes and your documentation keeps evolving. So really the key, we're at the end here. The key takeaways is that documentation is a critical clinical tool, a clinical communication tool. It's the foundation for how we practice in a team. Everybody, if we're not going to be doing team meetings all day long, but the way I'm going to be able to get the opinion of the occupational therapist or the teacher or the social worker is by writing their notes. So if everybody writes their notes as their therapy or their intervention occurs, then you have the information right away. And so it is how we communicate to each other. If I want to know when the patient is going home, I go to the social work note and I read her note to know, and then I can gauge what I can do for my therapy. Or if I don't have time, then they may change what I'm going to write in my note because the patient is leaving tomorrow morning and I didn't know. So then all of a sudden my note becomes a discharge note because now we got to prepare for the next step, the next phase. I'll say it again, the clinical impression and recommendation is why we do documentation. We gather data, but people want to know what you think. This is your signature. This is what you get paid for your career and the clinician that you are, is to know what you think and to know what else we can do for the client or the patient. So the clinical impressions and the recommendations, whether you're an assistant or not, are very valuable and critical to your whole care. I keep saying that time is of the essence when you write notes. Do it as soon as possible. Find time. Make sure you take the time to write your note thoroughly. And if you can find a setting where they already have templates, go for that. It's going to save you time. You're going to stay compliant. You're going to be able to write things in an orderly fashion and for others to be able to read. And really embrace efficiency strategies. I am giving you mine. I just giving you my little toolbook, but do talk to your colleagues. Do talk to your classmates in the SLP field, but outside the SLP field to see how they do it and how we can learn from it as well, because we're always trying to see how we can see more patients, more clients, but not at the expense of having a poor note, because that note is as important as your session. The only way you can do all the great therapy that you want, but if people don't know that your care, the patient loses. It reminds me very early on that I was working privately with a client that was involved in a motor vehicle accident. Worked for him for months. I was very young and I did not know what I know today. So I took my note. I said, I have time to write this report because it was a big report. I was nervous because it was going to be big and I didn't know how to write it. So I was continuously writing a little bit, but not really focusing on it and sharing it with the team. The client settled without ever getting my reports. The lawyer never got my reports. So I was stunned. I will always remember that client because he did not eat. He had a feeding tube and was doing some puree food and trials and eating at risk. I was involved with the care of this patient. And when they settled, they never had my information to help his case, help show what the accident did for him. This is when I realized that my notes are as important as the therapy. I may have done all the good therapy with him, but it did not impact his overall care, his care going forward, because they had zero SLP notes in the settlement. So that I will always forget. And it's because of this that I learned today that you need to have notes. People need notes and documentation. So what's next for you? You've just spent a few minutes with me looking at note taking and documentation and the why, the when, the how, the what to write in documentation and the importance and the power of your note in terms of showcasing your practice. And so I just want you to reflect on what you're going to do. For you, is it the what that you're going to focus on? Is it the why? Is it the when? Is it the how? What are you going to focus on going forward to make sure that your notes are complete and is specific to the clinical settings that you're in? And so I just want to put this question for you. And look at that, the butterfly is still here. The butterfly is still here, meaning that we've just spent some time together. And I'm just wondering I want you to reflect on, I encourage you to reflect on what this means for you going forward in whatever setting that you're going to be about your notes. And then quickly, I just want to let you know what's going on differently with Soul, because we're in the middle of the free summer webinar series. We are at the second one. Like I said, last month, we looked at how we work in different clinical settings. And today, documentation, which is such an important skill to develop and know how to do it right and well. What's coming up in July is setting SLP goals. I think because I come from a different angle, hence differently with soul, I want to share the angle that I take when I do SLP goals that have huge impact on the intervention and the outcomes of SLP intervention. And so I really want to focus on that. And whether it's swallowing, cognitive communication, or language or speech, uh, I want to review how we write goals so we get the best results. We involve the patient's or the client's perspective when we write them. So that will be next month. And then I don't know why I left it for the end. That should have been the first one I did. But for the end of the summer, I wanted to really talk about managing conflict and difficult conversation in clinical settings. I want to talk about it because people often think that I have a social work background. I don't. I really don't. But it's because I take a very social and holistic approach on everything I do. And the way I work with the team, I don't have a lot of conflicts. And I say this very humbly because it took me years to understand how to work. And I want to share how we can disseminate or avoid any conflicts or minimize them in clinical settings because they will happen. And often it's because two people feel really, uh, I don't have the word right now, but they're on the side of the patient, but their perspective is the only thing they see, and we need to explore all the perspectives. I don't want to say more. There's so much to say about this topic. Sometimes just that changes your whole um, atmosphere about who you are at work because you don't feel safe to talk or you don't feel safe to give your opinion. And then people miss your great opinion on the patient because there's so much conflict in the workplace. So I'm going to take it big and small from an SLP perspective, from a team perspective, from a person perspective, and bring it back to the workplace because conflicts are not bad, actually, but we just have to be vulnerable in how we are walking through them. And so I hope that I can share perspective that can help you in your workplace in the future. And so, yes, those are the next webinars coming up this summer in July and August. Please register. Please come back. Let's continue the conversation. What I'm trying to do here is elevate the field of speech pathology. We are such a niche in the rehab world or in the education world, and I want all of us to practice with more ease and expertise, and also compassion is a big one that I'm always focusing on. Because when we love our job, it's easy to do it, and our patient and client can feel it, and they feel that you're there for them. And so I just want to elevate our field, make sure that we practice in a way that we're all happy to practice. So that's why I'm doing those webinars in the summer. I just want to make sure that everybody is having a good time in the field. So please register and we'll see you in the next one. And I will end on this. It is 7:50 and I'll end here to see if there's any questions, if I can answer any concerns or comments. I'll also end with a little quote. I like to finish with a quote. And my quote for today is, "It's not the note itself, but the clarity of your thinking behind it that defines your impact as a clinician." And so to carefully write notes will really show how you impact the care of the patient and the care and how you um, uh, show your value to your team and how the team can see what you do for the client. So really to take care of how you document is really important, really important. It's a really important skill to develop. And so if this conversation was of value for you, I really encourage you to stay in the conversation with me on social media, and we can continue to debate, we can continue to learn, to share, and to get better I have to tell you that every time I do a talk or a webinar or presentation, my practice elevates because I again look at things in a very different way so I can share with people. So I really thank you for the opportunity to be here today and to share with you. But at this point, I will say thank you, and I will welcome any feedback. And what I'll do is I'll stop sharing my screen.